Every, everybody. As you heard, and I'll remind people of this later, we are recording this webinar. Do not worry. Nobody can see any of the guests. It's just the panelists that you'll be meeting later. And also when it comes to, I'll talk to you about writing some questions in the Q&A box later, but those will be anonymous too. So have no fear about asking whatever questions come to your head. I'll start by saying I'm lucky enough to be joining you from land and sea country that has been taken care of for many thousands of years by the Arakwal and Bundjalung peoples, and never ceded. And those peoples have continued their custodianship from thousands of years hence up to present day, and have done a wonderful job, and we would do well to emulate and respect and acknowledge their deep ancestral connection to this place, of which I am a guest. Okay, we'll soon hear from our panelists who are going to come on, but some housekeeping first. As I mentioned, and I always do this to let other people just join in slowly, but if you have some questions that you want to ask, you'll see at the bottom of your screen there's a Q&A box. Just feel free to type in any questions at any time. We have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. We'll try and answer as many as we can. Don't worry if we don't, and please don't be offended if we don't. We will supply you with an email that you can send those questions to and get to them later on. I think really that's it. So we are going to be watching a film in a minute, but we are, after the film, going to be hearing from two of our guests. One of those is Paul Gamblin, who you will all probably know as our CEO. And we're really lucky to have Andre Rerekura, who's the co-filmmaker, along with his partner, Nish Friedman, and on this film that we're about to watch, Coral's Last Stand. So really looking forward to hearing from Andre, aka Dre. I think that's it. You've heard enough from me. Let's go and watch Coral's Last Stand. And you'll definitely recognize Tim Winton. You'll recognize some other people too. So enjoy. Well, thanks, Mina. And we're going to talk with Paul for a bit now. I think, Paul, that I purposefully haven't watched that film in its entirety. I've seen some excerpts. So I'll just start with a question. Really, we heard words like injustice, anger, bewilderment from Tim Winton, John Butler ripping off the people and baking the planet. But there were apart from those two big names, there's some some big hitters, pretty eclectic crew. What was it like going out to the reef with all of those people, and can you describe the general mood and the experience?
Thanks, Phil. Happy to, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. You giving of your time to understand a bit more about this incredible place and the threats that it faces. I first got involved in conservation for Scott Reef about 15 years ago. Woodside and its joint venture partners have been attempting in a variety of ways to get access to oil and gas around this place. Initially, they actually wanted to build a processing development on the reef in the lagoons itself, and we were able to persuade it that wasn't a good idea. But they've been relentless. The case study that was mentioned there about the proposal to build an LNG processing plant on the Kimberley coast was another manifestation, and now this is the latest version. I didn't ever think I'd get to see this place that I'd read so much about and seen pictures of, because it's so far away. So it was really a special and incredible opportunity to be able to go out there. So working alongside the other major conservation groups you can see represented in the documentary, we pooled our resources and commissioned a vessel to take us out there. And we had 2 days, which is, I think, the shortest trip they'd ever taken anyone out there for. That's all we could afford to do. We made the absolute most of being out there. I've been very fortunate to dive in places like Ningaloo and in other parts of the world And Scott Reef really is very, very special. On the second day, that footage you saw of the manta ray, for example, and those beautiful flickering fish around the corals. I was out there. It was as the sun was rising about 5 a.m. We spotted the manta ray, and three of us went out into the water. And I have the most incredible memories, really, of being in this water, this clear water, surrounded by fish, surrounded by beautiful coral, and just trying to contemplate how anyone in this day and age could consider that it would be appropriate to drill for oil and gas next to a coral reef like this, and given the threats and the damage that oil and gas is already causing, and fossil fuels are already causing to coral reefs. So to go out there was an enormous privilege. I mean, it was a group of scientists and underwater filmmakers, and you're going to meet one of them in a minute. Out there with our patron Tim Winton. I've been campaigning with Tim for more than 20 years, and musician John Butler, who's also been campaigning for the environment for a long time, and fellow conservationists from different conservation groups. It really was one of those experiences that you never forget. And for any of us who had any doubts, and none of us on that vessel did, about how important the campaign for Scott Reef is, that trip absolutely confirmed how important it is, and that this must become a national, if not an international, campaign. And also, another reflection is that I think, when we think about what previous generations have done, and on their watch, and we scratch our heads and wonder how that could have been. Well, I think this is one of those moments that future generations, understandably, would say, "How could you have let this happen? If this goes ahead, it was on your watch, under your stewardship. How could you have let this happen?" And so that would be a reasonable assumption for future generations, for our children to ask. But it's not there yet. We actually have the opportunity to set things right and to not allow this blundering, inappropriate, outdated approach to the way we treat our planet. And so we have an opportunity now where we're down to the final months where governments are considering this project, to make our case, to build a campaign, to make it one of the biggest in Australia, to provide the confidence to governments that the community has their back to make the right decision for this place. So one of the most important things we can do is to tell the story of Scott Reef. It's a remote place. If proponents like Woodside and BP and others even considered drilling for oil and gas close to Ningaloo or the Great Barrier Reef, there'd be a huge outcry. It's taking longer for that outcry to build around Scott Reef because it's so far offshore. So telling the story of Scott Reef through this documentary, and through the interest of people like you coming along and hearing more about it, is so important. And one of the best people in the business in telling the story of the ocean and the wonders of the ocean is our next guest, Andre Rerekura. Andre has been helping us in our campaign at Ningaloo and Exmouth Gulf. Andre is one of the most prominent, most skillful, and most dedicated underwater cinematographers in Australia. And he's also featured in the latest Shipwreck Hunters series on Disney. And you've seen his footage without even knowing it, I'm sure, in lots of different ways. So I'm just going to ask Andre to just let us know what attracted him to going on this expedition, and what he felt when he was in the water and filming at Scott Reef. Thanks, Andre.
No worries, thanks, Paul, and hello everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's amazing to be here. I feel like it was just a privilege to be on this trip, and it's the least I can do. I live on the Ningaloo, and the things I see and the wildlife, not just in Ningaloo, but around Australia, around the world, but what the ocean gives is just phenomenal, and it's the least I could do, it's like that's the least I could do to help it from how much it gives. And it's also my work, I do a lot of filming all around the world for documentaries like this, and stuff for BBC and Dave Attenborough, and it's also my livelihood. So it's like yeah, it's the least I could do. The ocean doesn't have a voice, and for us to film it and share it with the world, and there's nothing you can say against that. It's just it's all shown proof, and we were at Scott's Reef for like Paul said, 2 days, but that's including the traveling. I think we got there after lunch and we left sunset the next day. So we had such limited time, and I felt like we only scratched the surface. And yeah, some of the things we seen were just phenomenal, like Paul said, these incredible corals with such an abundance of marine life and megafauna, and just the corals and the sponges, these giant sponges. I haven't seen that anywhere before. And if you spent literally like a week out there, I think you'd just be absolutely even more and more blown away. And that's not even the small things, like with Ben Fitzpatrick there dropping the ROV down to depth and him talking about these snowflakes and the build up, and that's what's also given it life. It's way above what we could ever comprehend, like the complexity of the area. So it's fragile, it's beautiful, it's amazing, and it's fragile. And it was an absolute privilege to be there with everyone and to be able to help capture this, and for Jane to make this story come to life was just, yeah, it was a real privilege to be a part of that, and a proud moment.
Great. Thanks for that. I did promise you a soft leading question, and I'm going to keep that promise because somebody's actually echoed one of my impressions watching a film like that. And you talk about, I now know so many freedivers, it's ridiculous without having actually done that myself beyond the surface skimming. A lot of that footage, was that done with scuba gear or was that you freediving?
About 99% was free diving. Just yeah.
And the really junior question is, how long can you hold your breath for? And I know it's a sober subject, but I'm really interested.
Sometimes it's easier when you've got beautiful wildlife like that because you just don't want to come back up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, being comfortable and relaxed, and in areas like that, you can do a couple of minutes most of the time. So which really helps to capture the beauty of it. Being on breath hold is also, it's so much more connecting with the wildlife. They're mostly happy to come to you and hang out because you're less invasive, you're less noisy. And it's just such a more comfortable feeling of listening to the crackles of the ocean and kind of connecting with it while you're filming at the same time.
Are there times you just forget to press go on the camera because you're just so sort of, I'd say your breath has been taken away, literally? Is
Definitely, yeah, there is. I do actually. There's times I just put the camera to the side because yeah, I need to take it in. It's a privilege to be in that area to see stuff like that, and I always try and tell myself to try and soak some of it up as much as I'm working hard to capture it. I also like to try and be in the moment at times.
that's great. I'll segue to a question that I've had just come in,
Yeah.
which is in the film, it was mentioned that 80% of the reef had bleached in a previous bleaching event.
Yeah.
Whilst you were out there, and I guess it's a question for both of you because you both uh, were under the water, was there still massive evidence of that? Was there any evidence of recovery? What was it looking like when you went out?
There was some slight bleaching there while we're there. Obviously we were there before this last heat wave and the last event that's just happened, but there was some slight remnants of it. But I think there was areas that were recovering as well, and then there was areas that were just absolutely stunning and kind of like a nursery. So there could have been some pretty young corals there, but it was coming in strong. Like it was a bit of a mix, but predominantly it was some pretty incredible stuff.
And did you learn anything? Did you have an experience that you've never experienced before in terms of sea creatures, in terms of, just being there, being on that reef in particular? Was it,
Yeah, definitely. I feel like especially for the time frame and for the things that we did see and encounter, and and film, it was like quite phenomenal. And just the size of these sponges, that's something that really stood out to me. And also, obviously, the sea snakes that I haven't seen anywhere because I'm pretty sure they're endemic to Scott's Reef, and they're just incredible. That's yeah, really, really, really pretty snake.
It's a You've got a tough job, Dre. I've just seen we've just had another question come in. I think this one I'll aim at Paul. Paul, just let me pull my questions over to this screen so I can look at it and look at you at the same time. Paul, the gas industry argues that projects like Browse are a part of a transition. Woodside claims this gas project will help the world decarbonize. What's your counter argument? What's your response to that?
This project would be part of a broad liquefied natural gas project that would emit, it's estimated over 6 billion tons of carbon dioxide into an already overheating planet. The project would last until around 2070. So we're supposed to be weaning ourselves and weaning the world off oil and gas very, very rapidly. This is heading us in the opposite direction. So I think it beggars belief that anyone could consider this project as part of a shift towards renewables when we're talking about 40 or 50 years of further and very significant additional pollution. So the pollution, the greenhouse gas aspect of this, which is really throwing more fuel on the fire around ecosystems that are already showing enormous stress. And I would say that Scott Reef was one of the first reefs in the world to withstand and to be subjected to mass coral bleaching, which happened in 1998. And so it goes a long way back now. The reef has shown some degree of resilience, which is a sign of hope. But the long-term trajectory is that the coral cover will reduce in these reef systems. So we need to do everything we can to reduce the impacts of climate change. So adding huge amounts more pollution to the atmosphere is clearly the wrong direction. So this is not part of a transition. This is not part of an honest and serious transition towards renewables. This is extending the life of and building and increasing the emissions from these mega projects. It would be us heading very much as Australians in the wrong direction and not contributing to a withdrawal from fossil fuels and a really serious attempt to shift away from fossil fuels towards renewables.
Right. So that begs the question then, who has the real power here? Is it the federal, or is it the WA environment ministers? Is it a combination of both? And what are we calling on them to do? And what would success look like? But what would happen if either one of those sets of ministers decides, yes, we're going to just say yes to Woodside and Cave?
Well, unfortunately, generally, for these kinds of decisions and assessments, it's usually a yes, with some conditions. That's the experience, unfortunately, and it's one of the reasons why we need much stronger nature laws. And there's a whole separate discussion and work going on in that arena. So this project is being assessed because of its significance by the Western Australian government, because there is a state waters aspect to this. It's off the Western Australian coastline, but also by the federal government because there are significant matters of national environmental significance around this, including endangered pygmy blue whales. We call them pygmy blue whales. They're actually subspecies of blue whale. They're actually enormous whales. The sea turtles, the green turtles you've heard about, and a range of other species that rely on Scott Reef and this unusual ecosystem, which is one of the most important coral atolls in Australia and has global significance as well. They rely on this system for sustenance as part of their life history and the cycle of life and the migrations that many of these animals perform up and down the Western Australian coastline. So the state and federal governments are assessing this. So technically, yes, they have the power. It's ultimately senior ministers, right up to the Prime Minister and the Premier of Western Australia, who'll be making decisions about this, and they need to feel the expectation of the community that they will make the right decision for now and for future generations and for Australia and for Australia's heritage as well. So that's where the opportunity is, and that's why we're mounting this campaign to spread the word, and it's actually spreading really well. This documentary is being shown all around Australia and has been. There are screenings every few days at the moment, every week, every month, all around Australia. And they tend to be standing room only events. I did one just last week at the University of Western Australia. There are all sorts of screenings happening. So we're seeing a movement building across all the organizations behind this, and the community as well is organizing its own screening. So there's something going on here. What we need to do is channel that expectation and to the politicians who ultimately will make the decision on our behalf. That's the most important next step.
Dre, are you feeling that same kind of energy and commitment from the diving community, from your fellow divers and filmers?
Yeah, everyone that we're so like-minded, we live in the ocean and we're just so connected with it. We pretty much do whatever we can to help look after and protect it, whether it's in your backyard or, stretching up and down Western Australia or Australia in general, or with the impacts of these type of project, it's going to be affecting the world.
Hold on. I've just seen another. Actually, I've seen a question just come in. I think this one will be for you, Paul. The the Labour government seems prepared to continue allowing that back onto the government theme. Uh, Seems prepared to continue allowing oil and gas projects despite pledging to meet its Paris target agreements. Can we sue the government for breach of promise, as it will damage Australia for future generations and no doubt increase the risk of extinction to threatened marine species? What does that look like?
I think it really is about putting that to the government, and thanks whoever wrote that question. I mean, I think one of the things that we've been observing and we've been saying in the screenings around the country is that it's our experience that actually people have more influence than they might imagine. It's really important that people, if they feel strongly about this, write a letter. Personal letter doesn't have to be long, to your local member of parliament, to the prime minister, to the premier. Write the same letter if you like, but personal letter would be really good. The next step is picking up the phone and ringing your local member of parliament and expressing your concerns. That'll be registered. And then the next level would be fantastic if people could do this, and people are doing this. Is join together with some other constituents, people in your electorate, and go and call for a meeting with your local member of parliament. And you can get in touch with our organisation, Australian Marine Conservation Society, or one of the conservation councils, for example, if you need any advice, is some talking points to go to those meetings. You don't have to feel like you need to be an expert. You expressing your concerns actually does make a difference. We need members of parliament around the country to feel this. We need leaders in the political system to understand that this is a bridge too far, that people won't accept this kind of development, and that they're prepared to stand up and call for a better way, and to call for an honest, fair approach from government, which means you asked what success looks like, Phil. Success looks like being respectful of places like Scott Reef, of understanding the pressure that they're under. We've had serious bleaching events simultaneously for the first time at the Great Barrier Reef and Ningaloo in the last months. We've got an algal bloom, which is fueled by climate change, persisting off South Australia right now. If there is ever a moment to say enough of these huge oil and gas projects, this is the time to draw a line in the sand, as Tim Winton said in the documentary, and to find the wherewithal and the truth and the honesty to see a far better approach, a far more reasonable approach, which is to transition to renewables, which is already happening, and not to open multi-decadal, massive projects like this that threaten our heritage.
Quick question then in response. Didn't Murray Watt already approve this, or was this a different Woodside project?
That's a good question. So what Murray Watt and the Western Australian government unfortunately have already approved is the Northwest Shelf extension, which is where the gas from Scott Reef and the Browse Basin would be processed. So the processing facility and the controversy around the potential damage from that facility to the rock art, and also just the pure emissions, that aspect has been approved, but the gas that extension would need for the next 40, 50 years most of it would actually come from Scott Reef and from the Browse Basin. So that aspect has been approved, but the Scott Reef piece, where the gas would be extracted and the condensate, which is light crude oil, would be extracted from, and this de facto port with big, huge tankers that they would establish just near Scott Reef. That aspect of the project has not been approved yet. Thanks for that question.
And again, I'll get back to you, Dre. I have a question for you. But I'm sort of following this theme. We have a supporter who's saying, I'm also concerned about the impact on the food chain of the destruction and degradation of reefs and the capacity for fisheries to survive, to feed large numbers of people dependent for their survival on healthy oceans. I mean, our supporters know we have multiple conversations with fisheries and commercial fishers and wrecked fishers. And so how is that going to be sort of folded into this reef campaign? Does that feature in our conversations, in our tactics, in our strategy to engage the commercial fishing industry, for example?
Well, yeah, the fishing industry and wreck fishers are concerned about these kinds of development because of the risks. I mean, there's the ongoing risk of a project like this over decades, and the documentary runs through some of those. There is also that risk of an oil spill or a blowout, and as you saw in the documentary, that happened off the northwest of Australia only about 15 years ago. I was involved in some of the advocacy around that. It was an extremely concerning, very serious event, which was serious enough. It could have been even worse. You can imagine a massive oil spill next to a coral reef like Scott Reef. It's unthinkable. It's another reason that we shouldn't be contemplating this. But I think that question is really important because it's global in its nature. Coral reefs are a tiny fraction of the area of the ocean, comprise a tiny fraction, but they're about a quarter of marine biodiversity, and they also are a major contributor to food security and to livelihoods all over the world. And so this project and the emissions from the project would actually contribute to the degradation of coral reefs all around our region, through Indonesia into the Pacific. These countries that are pleading with Australia to not allow further oil and gas development, our Pacific neighbours in particular, which are already feeling the brunt and bearing the brunt of climate impacts, including to their coral reefs. So there is a bigger picture at stake here, and that's where we know many Australians feel that obligation to think about the planetary impacts and the consequences of projects like this. And again, it comes down to what are we prepared to be for governments to do, our representatives to do on our behalf, on our watch. And that's why we know there's a huge amount of momentum from people to say, this is the wrong way to go. This is not a responsible approach to take. And so that's why so many people are now coming out and wanting to get behind this campaign to help us to stop this project.
Question for both of you. You've and Paul, I know this about you. I don't know, Dre, about yourself, but you come in as part of your job for many years, Paul. Especially you've engaged with ministers, engaged with environment ministers from all sides, all political sides. When you talk to ministers face to face, do you get a sense that there is empathy for the ocean? Do they leave you with the impression that yeah, I care, but it's out of my hands? What does it take to move somebody like Murray Watt or the Prime Minister or the WA Premier to siding on the right side rather than the wrong side? What does it take? What can we do?
Well, I mean, no, thanks. I mean, I think it's exactly this kind of thing, and then this is why we're so grateful to the likes of Andre for coming on this expedition and sharing his skills so generously to help to tell the story about this place. And Andre has some, opportunities to talk to decision makers like the WA Premier, for example, and which he's done when the Premier's up in Exmouth. Andre might like to speak to that as well. It's actually us as people who have had the benefit of experiencing the ocean and the wonders of the ocean, places like Ningaloo and the Great Barrier Reef and now Scott Reef, to be able to express what it's actually like to be there. And actually, it would be fantastic if some of these decision makers were to go there and to experience it for themselves. I think, most decision makers are in the world of politics for the right reasons. Um, Sometimes they can perhaps lose a little bit of connection to that, but I think if they were to experience this either indirectly through this documentary, for example, or directly, would make it very difficult for them to count themselves as a decision maker who allowed this kind of development to happen in this kind of environment. It's a way of just bringing home to them very directly what this actually means. So that doesn't it's not an abstract decision that they're too far away from. This is to bring it right up to them and to help them understand what this is. And Dre, I know you've spoken to the premier when he's been in town, etc. Do you have any reflections on the power of storytelling with the likes of those politicians?
I think the more and more of this that we can showcase to them, plus everyone else, for the public pressure is super impactful. It must be hard, like I suppose their positions and where they are and the disconnection from all the environment from around them must be pretty far away. It's like Paul said, if you could just take them out there and hold their hand underwater for a swim or something like that, and have a turtle come up and swim by you with followed by a manta ray, not just also these beautiful corals in your face for this abundant life, and feel the energy from it and just experience that. It can be quite life changing for some. I don't know their backgrounds, I don't know where they've grown up and what they've been, seen in their lives. They maybe not seen anything like that before, so it's hard for them to understand it. And it's I just feel like they should try and be proud of Australia and what it does have to offer, and protect it, like we've got so much other stuff we can use for like renewable energies. As Australia could be the front of it all, but it's crazy they're thinking to go this other way. I just hope they can wake up in time, and yeah, we're just going to keep pushing it.
I think that's a brilliant note to end on, Dre. And um, sorry, I laughed because I had this mental image of you holding the hand of a politician as you held your breath at 25 meters for an exceptionally long time. Um, Thank you so much, Dre. Thank you, Paul. And especially thanks to our supporters. We'll probably wrap it up there. So, and just by mentioning the fact that Paul, you mentioned that this film is being shown by communities all over the place, independently of us, through other organisations. This is a whole movement of people getting together to try and highlight the fact that we are imminently at danger of losing an absolute jewel of our marine crown. So thank you so much. Mina, if you could just throw that slide up of a few of our lovely supporters who have been supporting us around the country. We've been meeting lots of people up and down the East Coast, and I'm sure up and down the West Coast. And in closing, then, and we'll go to the last slide. And yes, my job title does have fundraiser in it, but it would be remiss of you of me to just sort of end this on a note of saying, yes, we obviously need your support. We need your financial support. I think in terms of a KPI of if we got double the income in 5 years' time from great connection and great engagement with wonderful supporters, that would be fantastic. But wouldn't an even better statistic be that we quadrupled the amount of people who joined us, and quadrupled the amount of people who signed petitions, who, as Paul was mentioning, picked up the phone, spoke to their local MPs, wrote a letter, and just fronted up to the people who are supposed to represent us. So we will be launching this Scott Reef Fighting Fund now. You will be hearing from us. We will be asking you to support us in many different ways, as you already are. And we can only just thank you again for your incredible support. And let's take this fight and let's keep the bastards honest. Thank you.